So we need to make room for one another.
Yeah.
And I would love for teenagers to see us gather. Multicultural gatherings.
Yeah.
Whether we're bringing a potluck, or bringing our pens and paper and we're making a community song. Everybody write a line and we're out here just doing things. And it doesn't always have to be like a big agenda or a big program, but community. Let's write our own song. Let's write our own story. Let's write our own poem and do those things together and not, discount the effort. Don't discount the stories, and I think that would be a wonderful example, wonderful role modeling for our young people to see.
Yeah, that's huge. Welcome to the Americus Podcast, where we pursue what it means to become a next level neighbor, creating a place we enjoy with the people we love. I am your host, John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Jess Sinclair. Jess is an entrepreneur who has started both for-profit and non-for-profit companies and businesses. She's a strategic leader. She's focused on people. And so I'm so glad to have her on the podcast with me. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for having me today.
Absolutely. She's already brought me some gifts in a gift bag, so I'm going to enjoy some of those after the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to that. Jess, I got a chance to read some of the form that you filled out. I know that you're an entrepreneur because one of the things that you did, when we can even talk about a little bit about this, but you were going through some recovery time. And during that time, you're sitting there and you have these dogs. We're going to talk about these fur puppies.
Yes.
So we want to know their names. But one of the things that you mentioned was while you were just sitting there, you're just like, you know what? I'm going to make something for my dogs that I can even share with other people. So I love that. That's an entrepreneur, is just sitting there going, what else can I create? So tell us a little bit, real quick, before we dive in, tell us a little bit about your fur babies and maybe even some of the products that you made for them.
Well, Miles is my golden doodle. He is amazing. And Shayla is a Maltipoo. So he stands about 6 feet when he's on his hind legs, and she's about half a foot tall. She's 5 pounds and he's 45 pounds. And while I was recovering from an accident, they were there. I live in a 2-story home. So I was basically sequestered to my bedroom, and people would come over and let them out, but they always ran back upstairs to be with me. And people have, things that they have to do, but those fur babies were right there. And when I was frustrated because I couldn't get from one place to another, and I was crying, they were there licking on my hand and all of that. And so I wanted to give them treats. And I have a baking business. We could talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. But one of the other things that happened during that recovery was that my doctor said, you can't have sweets right now. You got to lay off because I was sedentary. Yeah. And so since I couldn't bake for me, I wanted to make something for them. And so I started doing the research, picked up some research that I had already started years ago, and came up with Miles and Shayla Praise the Wolf treats. And so I make my own peanut butter, homemade peanut butter, and oats and sweet potatoes, and put it all together and make them some blueberries also. And so they're baked at home. I actually ended up getting a feed license, going through all of the process to do that and have it regulated by the state, because I want it to be healthy. That's right. And all of that as well. So yes.
I love it.
That's where that came from.
Entrepreneur. I love it. So we know that you had mentioned that you were born in Mississippi.
Yes.
Right. So tell us a little bit about growing up. Tell us a little bit about Jess and your life. So
the life of Jess started.
Sounds like a good book.
Yes. Right. Somebody take a note on that. So in Mississippi, the setting is this small 2-bedroom home. There's a living room, and then there's a kitchen, and there's a curtain. It's my grandmother's house, and she's lived there for decades at this point before my birth. And my mom and my dad and my older brother, he's older than me by 2 years, are living in that home. And my mom is pregnant with me, and she sat down for a meal with the family, and then she said, I think the baby's coming. Now, I've actually heard my grandmother tell this story, so it's true.
Yeah, okay.
And my uncle was there as well. And so they didn't make it to the hospital. I was actually born in my grandmother's house. And my father delivered me and cut the umbilical cord and all of that. So my entrance into the world was different. And my life has been different, a lot of unexpected twists and turns. And I always have to remind myself, it started that way. It started that way. And so I grew up in Mississippi around lots of family, dirt roads in some places. I have a younger sister and two younger brothers that were twins. In about 1984, my mother had twin boys, and about 4 or 5 months later, one of those twins died of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. So I experienced loss, a close loss at a very, very young age. It's very confusing for me and for my family. So a few years later, we ended up leaving Mississippi, and my father came to Florida. He's originally from Florida. Pahokee, which is South Florida. And so on his way to South Florida, just to get away for a while, he ended up in an accident. And he was hospitalized for several months. And so my mom's doing all this traveling back from Mississippi to Florida, and we were like desperate to be with my mom and dad. So she takes us for a visit. Okay, we're going to go visit your dad. And so we pack up just what, we're going to take for the visit. And we ended up living in Florida. We never went back. So we made our home in Tallahassee, Florida. And that early part of my life, coming from a place where everyone that I knew pretty much looked the same, came into a community where I was the only one in a lot of spaces. So I was a minority African-American child in a classroom full of white students. And that was a huge, I didn't know this word then, but paradigm shift for me and for my family. My father was very strict about education already. So he was always adamant that we speak proper English and that we present ourselves well. And so even in those spaces and coming to Tallahassee, we were just different. And so I've lived feeling different, being in spaces where it starts out uncomfortable, but getting to an understanding of how to be you in a space where it's so easy to try to be like everyone else because you're the only one. It's so easy to want to fit in. So that was introduced very early, elementary school. My father had a lot of emotional issues, and through that accident, he actually lost his leg. And so he became an amputee, and he was in his, I don't even think he was was 30 yet, and 4 small children and a wife. My mom had been mostly a stay-at-home mom, so she starts working. That's in entrepreneurship for me came from watching my parents. They started out making vanity tags for cars, vanity plates for cars, and they let me and my my brother help with those things and sell them and things like that. So I saw them in hard places in life, but then transition, making opportunity in obstacles. So I saw that at a young age. Even though there were very, very difficult times, I always had those role models of, as long as you're living, as long as you're breathing, your hands are working, your feet are working, your mind is working, there's something that you can do. And then with that fabric, that layer of academic excellence that was required in our household, I think it set me up for a resiliency that I would need going through life later on. And so that was coming into Tallahassee early times. I ended up, our family moved around a lot in Tallahassee. So by the time I was in high school, we had moved countless numbers of times, but I had gone to like more than 10 schools before I got to high school. So now we're living on the south side of Tallahassee. I'm going into the 9th grade. And it was another situation of everybody knows each other. We're the outsiders kind of feeling. Everybody was cousins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's just us, my brothers, my sister, and I, and my mom and dad. And it was a difficult transition for me. And I have to add, and I don't want to put all the depressing soup, the depressing ingredients in the soup. So I promise you it gets better.
Yeah.
So experienced abuse. Like I said, my dad had some serious emotional issues. So I experienced the abuse at a young age. And so here I am in this new space where I don't feel like I fit in. And the first semester, I think, of high school, I wrote a poem.
Okay.
And this poem was about my brother and the brother that passed away when I was a child. And a teacher came and found me. I submitted it for the first edition of the Dreamcatcher magazine that we had. And a teacher came and found me and she said, "You're a writer. You're a writer." And all these people, students, teenagers, right?
Yeah.
They were patting me on my back and, "You're that girl who wrote the poem," those types of things. And so I began to see myself differently. And so that was like an introduction. I wrote all the time. I was an avid reader when I wasn't. My friends will tell this story about how I would borrow their library cards. Okay. Because there's a number, a maximum number that you can get. So before school or after school, I would borrow those library cards and check out all the books that I could, promise to turn them in on time, and then start it all over 2 weeks later. So the reading, the writing, those were not just things that were for talent, but it was also like peace and joy for me. So high school, those things started to come out. And then I decided for myself, this is what I thought. I've come to know Jesus, so I know this story is a little bit different than I was experiencing it. So I thought that I would overcome some challenges by putting myself in uncomfortable situations. After experiencing the life that I had and going to school and feeling like an outsider, I'm going to get in there and challenge myself to be a public speaker. Yeah. So I decided I would run for office in high school. And I got up there and dropped my note cards, lost my place, stuttered all over the place, was highly embarrassed and laughed at. And I lost. Nobody voted for me. Yeah. And so I came back the next year and did it again. And I came back the next year and I did it again. And in my junior year, I was elected the class vice president. Wow. But there's a twist. Okay. Before that school year started, right at the start of that school year, I found out I was pregnant. And so here I was, the junior class vice president, a teen parent. And so that was another transition in my life that was unexpected. And at this point, I'm on a roll, future business leaders of America, a role model, and that was something that when I looked at it initially, I was so disappointed in myself. And so I remained the junior class vice president and had a child. And I dual enrolled in college and worked a part-time job. And so from there, they actually elected me to be the senior class president. Wow. And for me, in my high school, we had a daycare on campus. Okay. And so there were teen parents. There was a presence there. And a lot of girls dropped out eventually, or they went to the teen pregnancy program. My mom fought for me to stay in school. And she was a huge champion for me. You hear that you weren't raised that way. And that's absolutely true. I had no, role model that was a teen parent or even had a child out of wedlock. So this was completely weird for my family to go through. But my mom, she was there for me. And she said, "I just want you to graduate high school." But I went on and got a master's degree. Wow. So didn't just meet that requirement or that goal. And that took a lot of not just work from me, but it was community.
Yeah.
It was having, even in college, professors who said, bring your child and we'll get a grad student to watch her while we're in class. And at jobs where the supervisor would say the same thing. You're not missing class today.
Yeah.
We're going to watch her and we'll drop you off and somebody will come back and get you. So the community that rallied around me really made it possible for me to not just graduate high school, but to go on and excel in areas of my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there's so much there. I mean, you talk about identity, you talk about knowing who you are. I was born in Germany. My family's from Minnesota, Wisconsin area. And so we've traveled a few times for military. And I always felt like that too, of like, where's my place? What's going on? This is a new setting. And so when we would move, we'd have to start relationships up again. And, we would have to, really reach out to people that felt very comfortable with their own networking at this point. And so, you're kind of, still being yourself, but you're putting yourself out there to, hey, no, I'm looking for relationships. And then within a year, you move on to the next and next. And so you kind of get that used to like people coming and going, but you have to find your identity, right? So identity was huge. Opportunities, you talk about just constantly watching your family go through different opportunities and then taking advantage of those opportunities. And then, like you said, seeing that and going, okay, there are obstacles here, but then there's also opportunities within that. And so how do we do that? And then this idea of excellence, not just taking opportunities, but doing well in them and excelling in those. So, I mean, those are three huge things. Even when we're talking about just what it means to be a neighbor, a good neighbor, a next level neighbor, you got to know who you are, right? You got to take opportunities with people and you got to take, and then you got to do it with excellence. You don't have to be perfect.
Right.
No one's asking you to be perfect, but you can be excellent at what you do, right? You can do it really well. And so you went from Mississippi to Tallahassee. So big transition, like you said, and then small moves here and there, constantly having to create relationships and build relationships, and then go to different high schools. So did you know what you wanted to be at an early age? Like what was your mindset? What did you want to be growing up?
I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Okay, wanted to be a pediatrician.
I did.
Okay, where did that come from?
I just love children.
Okay.
Every time I saw a baby, I just wanted to grab their little feet and their little toes.
Like, you get paid to do this?
Yes.
Let's do that.
And then I heard some grown-ups talking about what doctors have to do to become doctors, and I didn't want to do that. No. And so then I wanted to be just a businesswoman. Think about the 80s and what you see on television. It's the doctor, the lawyer, firefighter, police officer, those types of things. And then women were secretaries. So I wanted to be a secretary and be at the table, but I didn't have the ideas of entrepreneurship. But in my high school, toward probably my senior year, they started trying to explain the concept of entrepreneurship to us as students. So that was kind of my first time I heard the word entrepreneur, but still didn't have any type of understanding of what that was. When I went to college, I just knew I wanted to help people. And having had the experiences that I had going into college, I wanted to help women. And so I started out in the business program because I want to be that businesswoman. Started out wonderful program at Florida A&M University. Very rigorous program. And then
is that why you went there? Is because you knew that program was good and you wanted to kind of be a part of that? Or?
Absolutely. It was a 5-year master's business administration. They recruited me. They gave me scholarship money and they said, come to our school. And I said, I am on the way.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I got there and there was a lot. It was a whole lot. I'm a single parent. I was living on my own and needing to work a job, and the class load was huge. Talk about excellence. And excellence comes at a sacrifice, and I didn't have room to make that sacrifice. And I took a writing class just to have something that gave me peace. And I was sitting in that class and the professor said, "Why are you in the business program? You're a writer. You are a writer." And so I started the journey of trying to find my identity on this campus with brilliant people who seemed to just know what they wanted to do with their lives.
Yeah.
I ended up losing my scholarship, going through depression. It was a dark time. And I actually had to withdraw from school. So I was on this going up, and then it flatlined, but then it was going down again. And so I took a couple of semesters off. I actually had also been accepted to Florida State University and had chosen Florida A&M University. And at that time, I met with someone from the advising office at Florida State. And she said, we'd like to sit down and just go over some career and academic goals, no commitment. Let's just talk. And I went in and did that. And she said, take another semester off. The offer's still good. The scholarship's still here. And then come back. And I did that. And I ended up graduating with a degree in English from Florida State, in English creative writing, with a minor in sociology. Wow. And then I went back and got a master's in public administration with a specialization in nonprofit management.
Wow. So, and you talked a little bit about even like public speaking and engaging in that, and all of those are relational, right? You're trying to connect with people.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I mean, even, having children, you learn so much on how to communicate very basic things, right? To people, and having as much patience as you can to walk through that. And so what was your family like when you were, like you said, you were kind of on this high, then you kind of went low, and then you started kind of going back up and progressing. Were you still connected with your family really close, or did you kind of see yourself kind of moving towards just other relationships?
Still connected with family, but definitely developing relationships. At Florida State, I met one of my best friends. We're still friends to this day. And that was another paradigm shift for me, because the thing about it is, when you're a college student and you have a child and you have to work, your experience is so different. Yeah. So you have people that are your age, but they live in the dorms or they live close to campus, and they're able to hang out with each other and form those relationships.
That's right. They're able to text you at like 10:30 at night, like, "Hey, let's go all Taco Bell," and you're like, "We can't." No.
We did not have text messaging back then.
Oh, okay.
That was pre-text.
Yeah, what were they doing? Were they sending letters? Were they sending letters off of horses? Is that what they were doing?
Just about. Okay. They would send emails.
Okay.
If you missed the email at that point.
Is that dial-up internet? Is that what you're talking about?
It was, and it made a sound. It made a sound. So if you didn't get the paper memo, or the phone call, you were just out of the loop. Yep. So I couldn't get those phone calls though in the middle of the night. And I remember having an exam. It was raining, and there was a party, and this woman, she said, I'm not going to go to the party. I know you have an exam. I'll watch your daughter while you go take this test. And we've been friends, like real friends since then. So definitely still was close with my family. I was a first generation college student. So the concept of what was going on academically was not something that my family, had the capacity to help me with. So those were things that I had to navigate myself at the age of 19 and 20 and figure it out and decide, because my mom was like, "You've already gotten your high school diploma," and my grandmother was like, "You can go work at the grocery store, baby. You don't have to do all that." And so they were there for me and supportive and loving, but it just wasn't something they had the capacity to help me through.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were really challenged in becoming a writer and working through that. So at what point, when you finished college, what was your first job? Where did you find yourself?
I worked prior to graduation. I worked for the Florida Bar. I started working there when I was about 22. Okay. And so when I graduated and got my master's degree. Okay. I excelled, had been promoted. I started as a clerk there. And by the time I left the job, I was working for their first diversity program.
Okay.
And I met some amazing people, the Supreme Court justices of Florida. It was an amazing experience. And I worked in the communications department. So worked a lot with the board of governors of the Florida bar.
Wow.
And so amazing exposure there. When I graduated.
Highly motivated,
yes.
highly educated, ready to go, driven, grit people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they were not selfish with, especially with young people.
Yeah.
Like, come and enjoy this and get this experience with me. And one of the first female directors of the Board of Governors, I had the opportunity to be there and work with her. And that was an amazing experience. When you talk about the first diversity committee, and we're talking about early 2000s here when that happened. So it was amazing. And Ben Crump was the first chair of that committee after it was established. And so I got to staff the committee before he was the person that everybody else knows. He's always been him, but you know, I got to be this little person, you know, seeing it all come together. And now I hear these names of people and it's like, wow, you know, they took time to explain things and give me opportunity even back then. Yeah. So graduated with the master's degree, and the first job I got was the director of development for a consulting firm. And the clients that we worked with were in the aging industry. So worked with people who were who cared for senior citizens. And I learned a lot about aging in place and community for elders, Life Act 2, which was an initiative with AARP back in, I want to say, 2008. And that was not only an opportunity to learn about management in for associations and conference planning and exhibits and all of that, grant writing, strategic planning, but it was also education in about neighbors that I wouldn't have interacted with. So looking at what does it mean, learning what an activity of daily living is and why it's important when we talk about this for someone over the age of 70. So learning about your carpet and your rugs and how that can become an obstacle to an older person. And then thinking about how people are able to access food and access community and access social networks as they age is something that at the age of 25, 28, I was learning about. And so I learned to see people differently. Yeah. It gave me like super lenses to see people and to understand those things. So did that work for several years. And then I went back to school and did some work in English, rhetoric and communication. Got enough of an education so that I could teach at the college level if I wanted to. Yeah. And then it was time for just a few years before my daughter was about to go to college. Okay. So another transition coming up.
Yeah, another transition coming up. Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, you had mentioned, you know, several times, and I mean, again, I understand that, you know, when you're in new places, you're constantly having to learn how to adapt, right? To recognize difference, to recognize, you know, everyone else feels like they're in the same space, but I know that there are other spaces that exist, right? And so, and now you're also advocating for people in those spaces and learning those spaces even more. Absolutely. Like you said, on a very daily living. And I'm just going back to just as we try to be intentional with our own lives is recognizing that when someone comes into a room or someone comes into a store or someone comes into your house, we don't know what they've experienced in their lives, right? We just don't know. We assume, we're like, oh yeah, maybe by the way that you're dressed, by the way that you look, maybe I can assume some things, but you have no idea what people have truly experienced and what they're dealing with and what that next transition is for them. Right. What's that next step for them? What are they looking for and longing for? And as as a neighbor, we can be a part of that transition. We can be a part of helping. We can be a part of just engaging and letting people think for themselves too, and processing that as well. So
absolutely.
So I love that. I mean, so all right. So tell me what happens. We're talking a little bit again about some of your first jobs, getting in. Your daughter's about to go to college. Where are you in transition, and where does Americus come into play?
Okay, so right before my daughter got started getting prepared for this college life, we experienced a tragedy in my family. My younger brother, the second twin, went missing in 2008 in Tallahassee. And to this date, he has not been found. And so I went back to college, and all these things were happening. And I found myself kind of questioning why. Like, what is it all for and about? He was so talented, just brilliant, and never really just found his jam, and it seemed like he was just getting there. And then this happened in our family. And so it was an opportunity for me to kind of think, what is the mark that I want to leave? And not just the legacy for my child, but what comes after. And I heard someone say that what's in the dash, what is my dash going to say and relate? And so one of the things that I grew up doing was being in the kitchen. My mom taught me how to make sweet potato pies. So I end up going in the kitchen during this time, making sweet potato pies.
That's right. Yeah.
And just out of give me some peace of mind. And so that became a business. So I'm selling sweet potato pies, I stopped my job, and I was going to college, stopped my college, and got to pay the mortgage. Yeah. So I'm doing that. And my daughter is a musician. So it's also, I'm working with her, and she's out there opening concerts, and we traveled to DC and New York and all of these things.
Is she playing instruments?
She plays the guitar and the acoustic and electric guitar. Okay. She is a very talented singer. She does not sing. I used to force her to sing in the church, and so she don't do that. She hip hop, rap. That's what she does. And she went to college. She decided she wanted to go to college in New York. Okay. So she ends up at the City University of New York. She has graduated since then with a degree in music, and she is a sound designer. She lives in California now. But when she left, the house was empty. Yeah. And you think about, I was 16 when I had my daughter. Now she's gone. And everything that I had kind of, the life that I had built was because, I was caring for this wonderful person that I helped create. And so now it's just me, and it's about me. And so that was a hard transition. I had never heard of empty nest syndrome. Took somebody else to tell me about that. And so I had a friend, and his mom had a house here in Americus. And she's like, girl, you need to get out of the house. I'm taking you with me. And so we rode here, and we came up, I think it was college, and I saw these houses and these streets, and I felt this sense of nostalgia. It reminded me of growing up in Mississippi. Yeah. And I tell people it was like coming home to a place I had never been. Wow. And I wanted to live here, like immediately. But it was several months later, I packed up my house, and sold everything that I didn't take, that would not fit in the car, and went and lived with my mom for about 8 months. I was about 35 years old, went and lived with my mama, and tried to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I thought about that house with a screened-in porch and the rocking chair, and I called that friend, and I said, can I stay in your house for a little while? Yeah. And she said, you want to live in Americus? You've only been there once. And I was like, yes, I do, please. And she said I could. So came here and just sat on that porch for a good bit of time. I looked, one of the first things I ended up doing with relation to community is finding the theater.
Okay.
I had worked on plays in church in Tallahassee, had just really started doing that. And they were like, these are really good plays. And so we were putting them on and all this stuff. So I looked for theater and sent out an email. Didn't expect anybody to respond because that happens in big cities.
That's right.
And people don't respond. But they did. And they were like, we're going to put you on the listserv. And when there are audition opportunities, we'll let you know. And so they did, and I did. So I ended up auditioning for a play, and I was in three plays. I think it was three plays at the Rylander with Sumter Players. So Sumter Players was my first real connection to community in Americus.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. I always think, again, we got here on a new assignment in April of last year. So when we kind of moved in, I'd read some books on Americus, try to understand a little bit of the history. I would ask people, hey, tell me a little bit about Americus. And so I love asking people, like, what was their general expectations when they moved into Americus? What did you hear? And then what did you experience? So, so you knew it was a small town. You've been a part of that. And obviously the history of Americus, there's a lot of history here, right? Both good and bad, right?
Absolutely.
What did you experience by, participating in the Central Players? Again, you're like me, who we always come into a situation or into a city knowing that a little bit, like this understanding of an outsider. Like I get that space. I don't mind necessarily being in that space because it's weird because you feel uncomfortably comfortable there. Because it's like, I know this makes sense to me. I want to be in a place where I feel super comfortable, but I'm always, on the outside just a little bit. So coming into Americus, did you feel very welcomed by Americus? Tell me a little bit about your experience with.
I had no expectations.
Okay.
I would not like you. I did not do any research on anything. I just saw the street and the homes, and I just like, this is good for me. And so with auditioning for this play, again, no expectations. Maybe they'll let me be, an extra or something. Maybe I can hold somebody's folders. I don't know. Yeah. They cast me as the lead in this play. And the play was Miracle on 34th Street.
Wow.
And have you seen that movie? So the lead in that movie is not a Black woman. And so they cast me as the lead in this play, and the child was not a Black child. So I was like, okay, we're going to really do some theater.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to use our imaginations here. Yeah. And so it was so out of the box, like not anything that I expected. So I got to come outside of myself and really give to the experience. And I think she doesn't live here anymore, but the director at the time was Jennifer. I think her name is Siebel now, but she was hands-on with that project. And just so Ray was there, and we've lost him in the community, but he was amazing. And they were like, talk louder, speak louder, we can't hear you, stuff like that. And it was just an awesome experience. So a year or so later, I thought about that, this character who has lost her belief in miracles. And she has this child who says, this is Santa, and there's no such thing as Santa. All this stuff is going on. And the mom doesn't believe in love, and she doesn't have faith at that time in her life. But there's a series of things that happen without any explanation. And through that, her faith is reborn.
Wow.
And that's the experience that I got. And so she finds identity, in that space. And that's what that experience was for me. Yeah. I interviewed for a job at Habitat, maybe a couple of months after that. And someone says, weren't you in that play? So people started to recognize me from different things. And so that gave me kind of what I needed to really just immerse myself in the community.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful illustration, right? So one of the ways that I met you, right? Actually, the first time I met you, right? We were at the annual event for the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And you were so kind to me because, I'm here with this little, press thing, and I'm trying to get people to come and do a little bit of like a little sponsorship thing. And you were right there. You're like, yeah, I'm here. I'll help. But that night, that event, man, they really showcased a lot of amazing people, a lot of amazing things. But you were also given some awards. So I would love, I just saw you. I mean, it was a great experience for me to be able to sit down and go, wow, look at all these people and look at what they're contributing to Americus, So you're coming into Americus less than 10 years, and you're a part of the city in a very impactful way. So share with me some of the awards that you received and maybe a little bit of history of where those awards came from and what you're doing in the city to have got you those awards.
Okay. The award, one of them was a passing of the gavel, which was for my service as the chair of the chamber.
Yeah.
And the second was an induction into the legacy of chairs. It's a circle of legacies of leaders. And I had the privilege of being the first African-American chair of the Chamber of Commerce. And for me, my business is a small business, and I don't have a storefront. And I went through the cottage foods process and figured out how the packaging, the excellence that you talked about, wherever you are, present it with excellence. And so I feel like I made a mark, with the packaging. So people knew the product was there and they tried the product and then they wanted to buy the product. So everything's licensed, and I wanted to participate in the community. And like I said earlier, learn how to put myself in uncomfortable positions and situations. And so I started just asking people, I started friending people on Facebook that didn't look like me and asking them if they wanted to have coffee. And so we would sit outside Cafe Campesino, and I got to know people and their stories. And that was an amazing, amazing time for me. And then as a volunteer on a committee, I wasn't on the board at that time, just volunteering for the education committee, and then later on got the invitation. The application went out, and we had a different president of the chamber at that time, but she was very kind to me and always like, okay, if you want to put your products here's some things that you can do, and giving me tips and things like that. And so when the opportunity came, she was like, yes, you should apply for the board. And I did. And it was a time of transition for the board. Transition all around every time. So I'm used to transition. And during that transition, one of the things that happened was that our chair at the time, Brandy Lunenburg, she relocated. She was the president of the hospital, the CEO of the hospital, and she took a new job and she left. And the incoming chair decided that she had some other things that were pressing at that time for her professionally. And without that, kind of stability of the past chair, we really just didn't have anyone at that time. So we were going through and figuring out how to move forward. And I remember sitting on an executive committee call, Zoom at the time, because we still weren't meeting in person. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, outside of Amber Batchelor, who is the president and CEO now, I was the only other African-American on the call. And we were the only females on the call. So one of my peers, he says, well, I elect Jess Sinclair. And so they have the history. They have successful businesses. And so to be nominated, and I'm sorry, he didn't say elect. He said, I nominate Jess Sinclair. When to be nominated, that was just like, really? You would, nominate me? And everybody like, I agree. And so they put it out there, and I went on the ballot, and I was elected as the first chair of the first African-American chair of the chamber.
Wow.
So to receive that award that night was monumental for me. Coming back from an injury, just kind of being outside, being inside, but outside of the community during that process, and having so many other things having taken place during that time, just to come back and have that. And then when the people stood to their feet, I was just so overcome with gratefulness in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm listening to your story, and I hear, someone pointing out and say, I think you should be a writer. And that just, wow, like someone recognized something. You weren't doing it to be recognized. You were just living, and you were focused on, again, things like opportunities, excellence. And here you are again, you're just looking for opportunities, you're being excellent. And then someone says, hey, what about Jess? And you're just like, what? It's just, I think about how every day, if we live with intentionality, we live with excellence, we live for others, that people will recognize that we don't have to go and always pursue, like, I hope people see. People do see. People are paying attention, so that's a really amazing story. And I just remember, like I said, being there at the annual event and just seeing so much, seeing a diverse crowd, seeing people, seeing the president, seeing people up there and say, like, all right, like, this is great. I don't know much about where Americus was. I can read the history, but I can tell you where it is now. And there's progress. There's excitement in the city. And so I was very excited to see you get up there and take some pictures and stuff like that. So thank you so much for contributing here, and again, making impacts here in small ways. But one things that I love about small towns is, man, even small things are recognized because they're so important and so vital to a city, especially when, again, you grow up. Maybe you grew up in Americus, and a lot of people that grow up in small towns, they want to leave. And so we're coming in going, hey, we'll make a big splash. We're here.
Right.
So we're ready for it. So what does it look like now? Like daily kind of, what does it look like on a Monday for you? What are you focused on? What are some things that you're, attacking right now and just living with excellence in?
My pastor often says, if you don't see it, then that means you're probably supposed to build it. And that makes you the blueprint, right? Okay. And he says that a lot. And so I have the privilege and the honor of having been a blueprint. And so I don't have a lot of, I can't say that I've seen this stuff done before, right? And so I have faith, and it is, I've learned and continue to learn what faith looks like. And so right now in my life, I am absolutely walking by faith, and in my business, in the nonprofit, at church, at home with the fur babies, in the kitchen, all of those things, it's absolutely by faith. And so I started a nonprofit called Jess by Faith. And when I first came to Americus, I had a radio show called Jess by Faith. And so started it as a nonprofit now. And what Jess by Faith does is contribute to the scholarship and well-being of girls and women. And by scholarship, it's not limited to, it's not exclusive to academics. It really is about the whole person, awareness, self-awareness, edification, all of those things, in addition to academics. And one of the things that we are doing this Saturday, as a matter of fact, we have a conference called Girl, You Are Enough, and that will take place at Georgia Southwestern State University. And it is the first, I'm going to claim it as the first because there will be others. And the session is called Reimagining the Girl in the Mirror. And that is for girls who are ages 10 to 17. And the purpose there is that even in this community, though there's been so much change, there's also an alarming amount of violence and where people aren't being very neighborly. And I think that sometimes that comes from identity, lack of identity, lost identity, trying to fit in, trying to find a space. And then when we aren't able to find that within ourselves, then we cling and we morph into others, become chameleons, you know. And so the purpose of this is to kind of center, like be still, look in the mirror, and let young ladies, young girls have the opportunity to be seen and heard, to look at themselves and say to themselves, you are enough. We are always asked, well, what do you bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? And so when I've been asked that question, I want to get out my resume and my accolades and I was the chair of the chamber. But what if you weren't? What if those things weren't? You know, what if they weren't? Am I enough? And I think that even I know it personally with all the wonderful things that have happened in my life and tragedies and trauma and all things put together and mixed in a bowl. I've had that question that I've asked myself, that I've asked God, like, God, what do you want? And I had to sit very still and hear him say, you. And so that is the point of that conference and that experience for ladies and girls. There's an earlier session on that day for women, and it is and I'm trying to say the word. I wrote it. Empower her session. It was so clever when I came up with it, but try saying it right. So Empower her session for women, and it's called The Table Is Made Just for You. And so really going back to scripture where God prepares a table for us. And when he says, I prepare a table for you, no matter what comes after that, the point is he prepared it for you. And he didn't say we had to bring anything to the table. It's not a potluck, you know. It's all about just knowing that you are enough, and God will do the rest. If you just bring you know, that's our offering. And so to really have ladies and young ladies in that space, and then our more seasoned ladies are invited to stay and serve as mirrors to the young ladies who will be going through that session in the afternoon. So that's on the nonprofit side. And on the for-profit side, my business is J. Nicole Sinclair, LLC. And I thought that was going to be coaching and all of these things, but it became so much more than that. And so on one side of that, I do offer operations, development, personal and professional development to individuals and businesses. But also that's where my product line is under J. Nicole Sinclair, LLC. So I have shirts that are by faith and treats that are praise the woof and treats for adults. And this is one of my shirts. It's Girl, You Are Enough. And I have some that I brought for you as well.
Love it. Yeah, it's one of the things that, it's really shared on the podcast a lot in this city and most cities is that there is a disconnect with a lot of the students, the young adults, and I do think it stems from a lack of identity, and so I'm always trying to find ways, as a leader, as a father of a 12-year-old son, a 7-year-old daughter, what are some things that are contributing to that negative impact in their lives, and we could point to very specific things, whether it's the things that they hear and they see, is that adding value to them, or is it causing them to doubt the value that they have, and so I don't know. I always love asking people, that are in that space, what are some things, that contribute to, or maybe ingredients of kids that do experience a lot of a loss of identity, and then what are some things that we can add value to them just on a personal level, So how do you kind of answer that to that target of 10 to 17? What are some things that you're seeing that's saying, well, this is adding negative input, and what are some things that just a normal person, a neighbor, can be walking by and going, hey, I recognize you, I hear you?
I had the honor and privilege of serving as the director for Sumter County Family Connection for a year or so, maybe 2 years. During that time, we had a presentation from Walter Knighton, who is now the superintendent of schools.
Yes.
And what he brought into that space was a survey that students take. They take it all over the state of Georgia. And I believe it's a health and wellness survey that students respond to. When I read that, when he presented it, I went and pulled it down, but his presentation was so compelling. It outlined student responses to things like, at what age did you begin to drink on a regular basis? The prevalent answer was 8.
Wow.
When the question was asked, how often do you, first it was, do you have suicidal thoughts? The overwhelming answer was yes. And then for those who answered yes, it was how often. And so many students talked about having these thoughts more than one time a week or constantly. And if it was 8, to me, that's overwhelming. To me, that's a lot. And so one thing he said was, we're trained as educators, and so how do you navigate a space as an educator when you have students who are dealing with mental health struggles, who are dealing with drugs and alcohol and abuse and poverty? And so the answer is community, right? We need people in places that have the eyesight, the soul sight to see this, to listen, and to have their fingers on the pulse, because the students spoke to the survey. Yeah. Right? They answered honestly. Yeah. Right? And I know that we have gotten together in our groups of grownups, and talked about the issues. Where are the voices of the children? Why aren't we gathering them together and asking them? Yeah. Asking them, what's wrong? What's not right? What can we do? What do you need? Yeah. Because they're out on the playgrounds. They're the ones who are being bullied. They're the ones who are being harassed. And social media, that wasn't there when I was a child. Yeah. And so my Pastor Caleb Edge and Bishop George Edge, they allowed me to start a program at Restoration Church called the Rubies. And today is the anniversary of I just saw it on Facebook and wow. But bringing girls into a space to have those, just to listen and have conversations with them. And so one of the young ladies told me one day that she had been cyberbullied. And she said there's this picture up, and they've been putting it up for 3 or 4 years, same time every year they put the picture up. And this young lady actually had to deal with some serious emotional trauma because of that. And so when we say, sticks and stones, we're not listening because it does hurt. And when a child is saying that this hurts me and I can't get over it, our response has to be a response to what they're saying and what they're feeling, not filtered through our own experiences. And I think if we really were filtering it through our own experiences, we would know that there were some things that were said to us that did hurt. It wasn't sticks and stones. It broke. It broke us in some areas and spaces. And so I think one of the answers is to come together, not with, preconceived notions of how to respond, but just to come and listen, be a sponge that's ready to soak up what they're saying and ask them, how can we help? How can we help? What is it that you're seeing that you're not saying? Or what is it that you're saying that we're not hearing? Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful place to start.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I know my 12-year-old son, he will come into our bedroom at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, what are you doing up, man? And he's just ready to talk, and so we scoot over in the bed and we just let him sit and talk a little bit, and we process things with him. And sometimes people, even with social media, people are going because they want to be heard, they want to be seen. And maybe the more and more we spend time physically being present with them
Yes.
and listening, they don't have to go find something that someone could care less about them on a keyboard.
Right.
And
Exactly.
they can find their value in the relationships that they have, so that they're able to say, I don't need this to be able to be known. Because I have these people that are physically here every day fighting for me. So,
Absolutely.
And I know that's tough. Like you said, we didn't really grow up in that. We came into like the MySpace day, like I was like, all right, MySpace top 10, that was the big thing.
Yes, it was.
Gosh, that was fun. So let's talk a little bit about the future of Americus. So, if we're even with children, especially with young girls, 10 to 17, right? So the next 5 to 10 years, so if they're 10, let's say they're 15, 20 years old, what do we want for them in Americus that we want to see in the future that will be there for them?
We want them to see that there's the mustard seed. I don't know, that just came to my mind. We want them to see the mustard seed. If you have even a small idea, it's not as small as you may think it is. If you think your purpose is small, it's just a mustard seed. And if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can speak to the mountain. And I think I want for girls who are 10 years old now to see that in this community, to see opportunities for them if they have just a little bit of hope, just a little bit of faith, just a little bit of identity, that will be nurtured here, that there's opportunity. I don't know why I'm thinking about Gideon being on the threshing floor. He's thinking, I'm the least of these. And, God has a work for him. He has something for him to do. And he's like, oh, me, Gideon? Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
And God's like, no, I do.
Yeah.
Do you know who you are?
Yeah.
And he wants to use Gideon. And so he gives him this opportunity to get this army together. And of course, you get all the people that you can. And then God starts to reduce.
Yeah.
He starts to reduce because he wants to get the glory out of it. And sometimes we don't understand that.
Yes.
And so if I have trouble at my age understanding that, sometimes kids don't understand. They absolutely don't understand that.
Yeah.
And so what I want them to get now and to start to learn is that it's not the more the merrier. Sometimes it's just you or just a few. Because God wants to show you his power, his amazingness.
Yeah.
And so even in the community, if it's just a few people that are showing up and doing something to make a difference, God wants to use it, and he's going to come in and make the difference. And so I don't want us to get weary in our well-doing or think that things aren't changing because just a few things have changed. Those are big things. And so we need to go back to our mustard seed, remember that this is just, it's maybe small to us, but whose report will you believe, Because these are mountainous things that were put in place by people who weren't necessarily here. And so now we're doing the work of kind of dismantling long-standing things and ideas. And we have to make space for other people's fears and other people's perspectives and to not challenge them so much that they don't feel like they can be in the room. And to make that space, if I can be in that space and I can say it felt weird to be the only one, then somebody who is a white male should be able to be in this space and say the same thing. So we need to make room for one another. And I would love for teenagers to see us gather. Multicultural gatherings, whether we're bringing a potluck, or bringing our pens and paper and we're making a community song, everybody write a line and we're out here just doing things. And it doesn't always have to be like a big agenda or a big program, but community, let's write our own song. Let's write our own story. Let's write our own poem and do those things together and not, discount the effort. Don't discount the stories, and I think that would be a wonderful example, wonderful role modeling for our young people to see.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah, I think about, again, we have our homes, we have our spaces, and I had heard, that our homes are not meant to be retreat centers. They're meant to be right on the battlefield for spiritual things, and we're talking about even neighboring, right? So if we're talking about, yes, I want to get, 300 people in a room, invite someone over to your table. Yeah. Have dinner with them.
Yes.
Get a chance to know them. Get a chance to know their story.
Yes.
Like you said, when you came in, you started having coffee with people. Yeah. Those little things, people start noticing those and go, well, if they can do that, maybe I can do that.
Right.
And it's going to be, the crazy thing is that we're used to messy because we know things get messy, right? And I say this several times too, but if we're not getting emotional about things, we're probably not going deep enough, because our passions want to come out. We want to be able to express ourselves. We're trying to find that line, like I grew up with an older brother. And so this idea of like wrestling with him, like we would always start at like 30%, and then we start working 40%. But if you don't have brothers, people like that, they go 100% right away, and they don't know how to play sometimes. Yes. So I'm like, you don't know how to play. You need to have like brothers, you need a community, you learn how to like grow together. So even in relationships, you're learning how to enjoy one another and try to figure, okay, I'm for this person. I'm not just for me and my agenda, but I'm for this person. And so, like you said, I mean, we want to see tens of hundreds of people coming together in community. And the more and more we just do that, like you said, in a small little way, it makes impact.
Absolutely.
It lets people know it can be possible, and you don't need $10,000 and 200 volunteers.
Absolutely.
But you need about, maybe $30 for a good little plate to make up, and invite someone over to your table for a few hours. And
I love that.
And you start there. And so, and like you said, bringing people to the table, right?
Yes.
So I love that. And I think that would be the future of Americus. It would be something that our children get to see, that as they run through, the house, they see different people coming from different backgrounds, and they're also playing, with their children and their siblings, and they're just like, okay, like this is a real thing.
Absolutely.
In fact, I have to tell my kids sometimes, they'll invite people over for dinner. I'm like, you can't invite adults over for dinner. That's not, you can't do that. But they see us doing it so much. They're like, yeah, why don't you come over for dinner? I'm like, we'll invite them over.
We'll do that.
You can't, but that's what you're talking about, is having that culture, caught. So I would love to see that. I think that would be super beneficial for our children. And for people that come into Americus, of seeing that future, seeing that we're not just doing it for optics, but that we're actually doing it because we live it.
Yes.
Because it's ours and we own it.
Yes.
And again, recognizing that it's going to be messy. I mean, life is messy, but that's what I believe. That's why I love the gospel story so much, because Jesus comes into the mess.
Yes.
Right? He doesn't stay apart from it. He actually comes into it, and he deals with the mess, and he dies in the mess, but then he resurrects to actually give us life. And now we have a restoration period that we're in, right? A redeeming period. So, so let's talk a little bit. All right, so we're about to land this plane. Such a great conversation. We always, at the very end, love to ask what we call rapid fire questions. So you get a chance to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
So just different aspects of you. So you talked about being, an avid reader. You and my wife need to hang out, because they do that. They go to the library every time, and they get as many books as they can. They stack them all up, and I'm like, you're not going to read those. And by the end of the week or 2 weeks, they've already read them all. So they're right on that same page. So give me a list of books, maybe top 3 books that you really enjoy, or just a book that you really enjoy.
Okay. One of my favorite books, and I cannot remember her name right now, but it is called Worth Every Penny.
Okay.
And it is the concept of value, knowing your value. You are not the big box store, so you don't have to compete and lower your prices. It's an entrepreneurship book. One book that I am reading right now is The 7 Mountain Prophecy.
Okay.
I'm reading that. And another book is the Deborah Anointing. Okay. I love that book. And then I read Untamed, and I can't remember her name now, which was a really, really good book.
Yeah.
Absolutely it was. And I'm trying really, really hard to read the book about, it's about minimalist living.
Oh, yeah. We're into that. We're trying more and more.
Yes. The first paragraph where it was like, this is not about getting more done in less time. It made me just sit there for a minute. I'm still sitting there with that part. So trying to read that one.
Yeah, trying to slow down to enjoy more and actually do more.
Mm-hmm.
I read a book that's called Slow is Fast and Small is Big.
Yes.
And it's really, it's that concept. I mean, again, we live in a world that's like bigger, faster, stronger.
Yes.
Hustle, hustle, hustle. And those things are important. But they just can't be the ultimate values, because then you're just constantly chasing
all the time.
And it's draining. It's super, super draining. But like you said, the little things that we do can make huge impact too. Mm-hmm. And the great thing is that we don't know what the impact in 20, 50 years from now. Like you said, we need to go back to the slow cooker mentality and not the microwave mentality, right?
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Man, just let it slow cook for a little bit. Like I said, I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but the idea of charisma will get you into the door, but character will keep you there.
Yes.
I mean, that's the stuff
big.
we're talking about,
Yes.
So if you have anointing, make sure that you're growing in your purity and your whole, growing in your maturity, because that's going to require something from you.
Absolutely.
And you need to be ready for it, right?
Absolutely.
All right, let me ask you this. That's my phrase. Let me ask you this. If you had to write, was it like an autobiography or a biography? I can't remember which one, but what would your book be called? What would be the name of your book?
I'm writing it now.
No way. Okay.
And it is called When Shift Hits the Plan.
Okay.
That is what it is called. Yes.
Okay. That's a really good marketing.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Do you have a kind of a particular date, or are you just building on it, and eventually it'll come out? Or
I'm working on it now, and actually it kind of took a turn because I started hosting a panel, having panel discussions with those with that title, and getting perspectives of other women and professionals, and
that's
just
good.
everyday
Yeah, kind of building
people.
resources and stories that help build off of that. Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
All right. One of the ones that we love to ask is, what are people most likely to misunderstand about you?
Ooh. Courage, confidence. That's the word. Not courage, confidence. Okay. People say, you're so confident. I am like an introvert out here living like an extrovert.
That's right.
And the confidence, it is not me. I anytime I have to even get up and open a worship service, I am all over the place, crying, sweating. So it's not confidence in me. I've had to learn to have faith, and faith gives you courage. It's the Holy Spirit at work. It is not me. It is not confidence.
Yeah.
However, I love that it presents as confidence, because if it looks like that to people, then all they need to know, girl, Jesus will do it for you too.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'll make you look confident too. So that I think.
That's huge. All right. Do you are you a morning person or a night person?
I'm a night person.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. What
are
you talking about? 12, 1 o'clock in the morning? Or where are you at?
At about 11, 12, I get.
Yep.
But then I have to do everything in the morning. So I'm dragging in the morning, but I come to life in the evening.
Yeah. Yep. I was going to ask if you have breakfast, do you normally have a particular breakfast, or are you skipping breakfast because you're...
Yep. I'm skipping breakfast, having coffee, no sugar, no cream.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. All right. You have a favorite restaurant that you like to go to?
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
I do not. Okay. I have favorite foods.
I was about to say favorite food then. Yeah.
Pasta. I love
a little
pasta.
Italian?
Yes. And add a little seafood in there. Those are my two favorite things. Yes.
I love it. Okay. What was the worst job you ever had?
The worst job I ever had was selling knives. I sold knives, and I laughed because the company that I worked for, when I left Tallahassee, I saw that they're still hiring people to sell knives. Yeah. That was like the worst.
Somebody's got to buy knives. I mean, there's a demand out there for knives. You
have to buy your own knife kit and sharpening block, and you get referrals and sell the knives. Yes.
I love it. Yeah.
You have to make your own list of people.
Goodness, yeah.
You have to order from the company.
Yep.
And get your own list. It was referrals only. And this was before the internet, like email. So you had to like know people and cold call and all that stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, and then go do the demonstration of how the knives work. I cut myself.
Oh, no.
There's no insurance.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Well, it works. Obviously, look, I'm bleeding. It's a really good thing. All right. All right. Do you have a favorite tradition or holiday that you like to?
Well,
you enjoy?
I enjoy Thanksgiving.
Nice.
And I enjoy Thanksgiving beyond holiday. I enjoy giving thanks. Mm-hmm. And so what I have been trying to do with myself is to not make it seasonal.
Yeah.
To just take opportunities to celebrate Thanksgiving and to give thanks. I want to come off of the calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. What's the favorite item that you've bought this year?
Wow. I don't know. I think that's a testimony that I bought a lot of things.
Yeah. Or the minimalist, you're like, I haven't bought anything. I'm reading this book. I'm not,
I bought some stuff now. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
So probably it was a computer.
Okay.
It was a computer with a bigger screen because my eyes are getting.
Yeah, that's right.
They're doing what they do.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. I can pick it up, take it, but it's not a laptop.
Okay.
So it's all in one with everything. I love that computer. So that's my favorite thing that I bought. But the favorite things, and the reason why I struggle so much with that is I buy a lot of things for other people. Mm-hmm. And I like to buy things and give them away. Even when I buy them for myself, I like to give things away.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. All right. If you could be an expert in anything right now that you've looked at and you're like, oh, that would be really great to know. What do you have an idea of what that would be?
Ooh, I would like to be an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like I want to know it all.
Like the nuances of it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. If you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would it be and why?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have some amazing waterfalls, beaches. It looks very serene. And I've looked at the culture and
That's awesome. Great. Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for sharing a little bit of your story again, and just seeing it constantly thread through that, that you were built to do what you're doing now. And it's exciting to have you in Americus. I'm glad to get to know you. We're going to be here on assignment for a long time. And so I'm looking forward to continuing our conversations and watching what God does in you and through you and for you as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast with us.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what God does in you, through you, and for you as well. This is just the beginning. Yeah. Yeah. It's just mustard seed.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, again, we've really enjoyed the podcast with you, and we'll be praying for you, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We did great.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It went well. I only messed up once.